Hi everyone! Renata here from Crafty Renata. Welcome back to my channel. This week's video is slightly different from my usual videos. So I have always loved water wells. You know, the ones that are made with brick and a little bucket and a little roof. I love them. I always take pictures of them when I see them somewhere. So yes, I always wanted one, but I never, got one. But then my dad asked me last year, would you like me to make you one? Would you like me to build you one? Of course, I jumped at the chance. Yes! My dad is incredible. Even though he's never done things like this as a job, he somehow knows how to do all of those things. You ask him to do a certain project and he just draws it out and gets materials and he does it, which is so incredible. I mean, he's so talented. I don't think a lot of people can do that. And so yeah, I'm very spoiled. Me and my sister were very spoiled that we have a dad that's able to do all of those things and that's also willing to do all of those things for us. So he built me one and it's amazing and I love it. But I decided, you know what, it's so beautiful. I'm gonna elevate it even more by adding something special on the sides of the little roof. So I decided to do a mosaic, and when I started looking at materials, I decided to go for beautiful rounded flat pebbles in different shades. Oh, so gorgeous. And that's what I did. I have done a few mosaics before, but I've never done a pebble mosaic and I've never worked vertically, which I was a little bit nervous about. So I did film the whole process and I combined a couple of clips to give you an impression of how it went. So this is not really a tutorial video, just to make that clear, but I do hope you enjoy it. I love how it turned out. So these pebbles were my first choice and they were called Retro, and then my second choice were these and they were called Rock Garden. The reason why I got two different color mixes is simply because they didn't have enough stock. The pebbles I chose are ceramic and they're also UV, frost and water resistant, so they were a great choice for this little project. Since I really wanted to mix the colors of pebbles, I had to cut the sheets up, which was a bit of a shame as it would have been a lot easier to just stick entire sheets of pebbles onto the sides of the roof. But I didn't really mind at all. I'm not going to show you me cutting all of them because it was quite time consuming and you get the idea. Right as I was about to start cutting up my last sheet of pebbles and my fingers were already bruised from the scissors, I noticed that I could actually tear them, and it was so much easier and quicker than cutting them. This is what I ended up with. So now it was time to prep the glue. It's a powder and you just need to add some water and mix it until it's the consistency you want. Since I was working vertically, I wanted mine to be thick enough so that the glue and the pebbles would stay in place. Once I slapped all of the glue onto my surface, I created some texture so that the pebbles would adhere nicely. And then it was time for the fun part. It was like Tetris, but with pebbles. I noticed that I was working a bit too slowly and my glue was already drying in some areas, so I added a bit more glue where needed. I also didn't put a very thick layer on, and I think that's why it was drying so quickly. On the other side of the roof, I decided to add a slightly thicker layer. Yay, that was looking so good! Now I could get started on the other side of the roof. As I said, I wanted to add a thicker layer of glue on that side. I also felt a bit more confident, so I was working a lot faster. how pretty that is. I needed to let this dry overnight so that everything would be nice and dry, and then I could get to the grouting. I bought slightly tinted grout because I thought that would look very pretty with the pebbles, and the grout is also waterproof and UV resistant. I followed the directions on the packaging of the grout where you add water and mix, and then let it sit for a few minutes, then mix again. They said to use an electrical mixer for this purpose, but for a small project like this, I don't think that's necessary. Mixing it with a trowel worked just fine for me. I used a few different rubber spatulas, one that was specifically meant for grouting, and the others were just craft spatulas. The funny thing is that I actually preferred using the craft spatulas. I used a damp sponge and cloth a few times to clean the pebbles and to make the grout look smooth. While doing that, I noticed that there was a little bit of glue coming through here and there. And when you use a sponge, you also remove a little bit of the grout, and any glue that isn't flat enough can come through. This was especially a problem since the glue was a dark color and the grout was a light color. I got the glue powder from my dad, so I didn't know in advance that it was a dark color. So I ended up using my Dremel tool and sanded some of the bits that were sticking out, and then I added some more grout to those areas. And this is when I realized that I used a lot more glue on the other side of the roof, and that was going to give me trouble. So I took the time to sand all of the glue, yes, all of the glue, between all of those pebbles as flat as possible. It took me 3 whole afternoons to do so, but I knew that it would be worth it in the end. And it really was. When I grouted that side, the glue wasn't coming through and both sides ended up looking great. You could say that I learned a few things by doing this project. One of them being, if possible, try to make sure you use a light colored glue. If you have light colored grout, it'll make things a lot easier. And if you need to cut up your sheets of mosaics, try tearing them first. If that works, it's gonna be a lot less hard on your hands than when you use scissors, because my fingers were so bruised. So yes, those are 2 things I learned. But I really love how this turned out. Look how pretty that is. I am so glad I did this. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video and you like the end result. Of course, I'm quite pleased with it. Of course, it's not perfect, but you know, it doesn't have to be. I really like it, and it was quite expensive, the materials, I'm not gonna lie, but I do think it was worth it. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. And I also love that, you know, obviously my dad did all the hard work building this beautiful water well, but at least there's a little piece of me in there as well now with the mosaic. So I love that it's both his work and a little bit of my work. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with my next video. Bye!